Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today, we'll be discussing the implementation of Tap to Pay feature into HEB's point of sale systems in their San Antonio location. My name is Emmanuel Collingwood.
My name is Beverly.
And I'm Laisha.
I'm John.
In this case, we'll be discussing the costs and the benefits of implementing this new technology. Tap to Pay technology allows customers to quickly and easily make purchases by simply tapping their credit or debit card on the reader. Customers may also use digital wallets that are available in most smartphones these days to simply tap their device on the terminal and pay and leave. We go to the next page to the survey. Because HEB is not a public company, getting data from them is really difficult. So we decided to create our own data by putting out surveys. We did 3 different surveys. This is the result of 2 of our surveys. In this survey, we asked these 4 questions. What is your preferred grocery store? We have an overwhelming amount of customers who live in San Antonio, of course, so they put HEB. We did get a good amount who shop at Walmart, Kroger's, and Whole Foods. And using that data, we're able to see that of the 9 that shop at other places, 2 said they would actually switch to HEB if they were to implement Tap to Pay as well. So using the data from our survey, if we go to our assumptions page, this is how we're able to come up with our assumption numbers. In the first value, we see the total transactions that HEB does annually in the San Antonio stores. There are a total of 46 out of the 420 stores HEB has in San Antonio. And the 21 terminals were actually hand counted at each store that we went to. So using these numbers, we came up with 1% as our base case, because we think even though our survey said that 2% would switch, we think that's a bit generous. Because so many people already shop at HEB and they're still making business regardless. So the 2% became our best case, and our worst case is 0.05%. Costs that are associated with implementing this technology includes the technology costs of the new system themselves. Each system costs $500 per unit with a $10 one-time licensing fee for the software. We estimated that we'll need about 966 units in total based off of the number of stores and terminals in each store. Another cost would be a new employee that would have to maintain these terminals. We estimated that we'll need about 12 employees, so 1 employee can service 4 stores. Because the technology doesn't really need constant maintenance, it's going to be more of a, hey, come and fix this. So the employee can travel from store to store. For our EBITDA margin, we use the competitor Kroger's EBITDA margin as a reference. And then we did the same thing for our WAC. For our inflation rate, we went with 2.5% because we don't think the Fed is actually going to keep their target of 2%. So we went a little higher there.
Okay, so now we're going to jump into the intangibles, which are pretty important for this cost benefit analysis, just because when we look at the base case, and I'll show you guys really quickly, the costs for this project are not too high. So it's going to be pretty easy for HEB to make back their initial investment. So if cost isn't necessarily holding them back from implementing Tap to Pay, then we want to understand some intangible costs that are holding them back. And the biggest one being that they actually have been trying to compete with Apple Pay and Google Pay and other contactless payment softwares. They created the HEB Go app in 2019, which allows users to shop for groceries from their mobile devices and make payments using contactless payment methods. So I'll explain that app a little bit here. We pulled this from the HEB website here, this graphic. So basically you bag your own groceries, you scan them using the app, and then you check them out through the physical checkout line and you use a QR code. And that's their version of contactless payment. However, we wanted to get some numbers on how this was going in San Antonio, and we found out that only 6 of the 46 locations actually allow you to use this app. So it's not very common, it's not used that much here in San Antonio. And we actually conducted another survey based on the first one. So we asked the same people who said that they do shop at HEB. We asked them whether they were aware of this app and if they use the app. So very few said yes, that they know the app. And then of those people, even fewer said that they actually use it to pay. So right now, this is kind of like making HEB in a middle gray area of like, should we continue trying to develop this app and make it more popular in San Antonio, or should we kind of divert and then just concede to the competition and implement that software into our kiosks? So it's kind of where they're at right now. But a few other intangible costs is new training for current employees in the form of a training video. That would definitely be a small hassle for the employees. Another hassle would be trying to teach customers how to use the new POS system. I know they got a new one about 2 years ago, and I remember it was kind of a hassle trying to teach customers how to use it because it was completely different. I even remember one time a cashier went around and helped the customer insert their card into the machine. So it can definitely be a hurdle at the beginning of the implementation of this. But onto some benefits. A faster checkout line for sure. So tap to pay takes about 1 to 2 seconds. All you do is take your credit card, debit card, or your phone, and you just hold it against the card reader. And then you don't even have to put in your PIN or anything like that. So it can create pretty fast checkout lines. It'll also be more secure since Apple Pay or Google Pay, all those different softwares, they scramble your credit card and debit card numbers at the terminal. And then for each transaction, they also create a different PIN for each transaction. So it's very secure. And then it can also retain current customer satisfaction since Tap to Pay is only adding a feature without removing any. And then we're going to skip this one really quick and go over, it can also prevent loss of immediate and potential sales from current customers who leave their wallets at home. So this is an intangible benefit because we wanted to calculate it, but it's pretty difficult to see if how many current customers actually leave their basket and don't come back. But it could definitely be a benefit. And it's also a competitive advantage since Walmart and Kroger's in San Antonio do not offer tap to pay. But moving back to this benefit really quickly, what my team and I were discussing was that they don't necessarily have to throw away their entire HEB Go app. They could definitely integrate tap to pay with it, and then they could have the best of both worlds, because I'm sure they don't necessarily want to get rid of that app. It probably provides a lot of good customer data and some other benefits for them. So yeah, they could definitely integrate both together. But now we're going to move on to the base case. So the base case is based on a 1% increase in new customers. So here we have the initial investment. It's about $500,000. So we're negative there. But then quickly we're going to see positive sales, and that's going to already pay the initial investment. So we have a positive net present value. It's greater than 0. So we're going to accept that. The internal rate of return is pretty big because it is a short payback period. So we're going to accept that because it's also bigger than our WACC, and then a 0.23 payback period. So we're going to accept that as well. But now I'm going to let Laisha take over for the best case.
Alrighty, so moving into our best case, we can see that the transactions are based in the 2% HEB growth in market share. And we can see a quick increase in sales only after 6 months of implementation. And we can notice that the software development and employee cost remains the same. The only thing that changes is the transaction fees, which is due to an increase in sales. And after calculating the net cash flow and cumulative NPV, we can expect to compensate the investment in less than 2 months. We have a pretty high rate of net present value and internal rate of return, which indicates that we should go ahead and invest in tap to pay. So now we're going to move into the worst case. So for the worst case, we base the transactions in the 0.5% HEB growth in market share. And we can see that sales are not increasing as much as the best case. But we can see that we're gonna make the first million after 2 years. So HEV won't be benefiting as much in the worst case in the short term, but it will be definitely benefiting in the long term. Software development and employee cost remains the same. Transaction fees changes because of the sales. And in the worst case, we can see that we should give back the investment in between 4 to 5 months. And we still have a pretty high percentage of net present value and internal rate of return, which indicates that we should invest in tap to pay. And now we're moving to John.
So with our break-even analysis, we found obviously we're trying to target where what percent conversion or increase in market share we would need to get a zero net present value to just recover the costs of implementation. And through this analysis, we find that we need an additional 0.24% of market share converted over to HEB in order to achieve that zero net present value. And then on to the summary table. So the summary table pretty well shows that, I mean, we have everything in the green as far as base case, best case, and worst case. They're all net present values are above zero. We have all really high internal rates of return and really low discounted payback. So it's a project that you can make quite a bit off of in a very short time. And overall, what it really comes down to is looking at those intangible costs and making sure that those don't like those aren't too strong of cost for HEB. And the main one we kind of talked about was the HEB Go app, and even that can possibly be altered or changed to implement tap to pay in a unique way, and it doesn't fully compete with tap to pay directly. And in addition, we see the data as far as the HEB Go app not having a lot of availability in the stores, or even people not being very aware of the app itself. And people are obviously way more aware of tap to pay as well. So it seems like overall our recommendation is probably to go ahead with the project, given that it really is just the way technology is going, and many other stores have implemented this, and just to keep up with the movement of the technology, and just looking at the data as far as how quickly it'll be paid back, it really only makes sense to implement. I think that's it.
Yeah, good. I've always have a lot of questions, so just because I'm curious about this stuff. So you say it might be faster. I'm trying to picture. I use my credit card. That's pretty fast, and I do it while they're bagging groceries anyway. So I'm not sure there's time saving. Is there a chance this will improve queuing at HEB? Is it just faster for the customer, but really doesn't get them out any faster? Does the queuing, is there any chance the queuing will change at all?
So when you use tap to pay on your phone, specifically, for example, on an iPhone, you don't even need to actually initiate anything on your phone. The NFC tag is a technology that uses tap to pay, and it comes in most phones these days. So the second you bring your phone close to a terminal, it immediately opens up your digital wallet. And if you already have a card as your default wallet, you can just double tap your power button. It'll authenticate using your whatever code or you have on your phone and immediately pay that. So that's where we got the time saving from. Rather than having to pull your wallet out, you probably already have your phone in your pocket or in your hand doing something. So simply tapping your pay on the terminal immediately initiates that transaction. So that's the time saving we see there, and the increase in queue time.
For the customer, but they're still standing there waiting for the what they bought to be bagged, I would assume.
Yeah.
Right? I'm trying to figure out. It doesn't sound like it's really going to move the line any faster.
I might not in every transaction, but I would say that there's definitely times where you'll have customers who are like having issues with their card or whatever, and I think that'll kind of smooth out some of those processes, make them a little simpler, a little bit easier. So ultimately, you have less of those cases, and so it may not be every transactions. And also just for smaller transactions, you or like less items, you wouldn't really have like a long bagging time, so they probably already have it all bagged before you can check out or whatever. So I think it may not be every transaction that's faster, but there definitely would be some transactions that are faster and smoother because of that. And also it just has to, even if it's just the customer's process is faster, I still think it would increase customer satisfaction because it's much simpler for them overall and much faster for them to like to be done personally with everything they need to do. They just have to tap it and they're set. Like they don't have anything to worry about after that.
I wonder how good HEB is at tracking, because if it saves you on average 7 seconds a customer, that's probably material during the heavy times. And I'm not sure if they track what their flow is per, they probably have some tracking where some cashiers are faster than others. And just to know if this impact, there's no question checks are a problem because you can't fill out the check until you know the amount. But the credit card, I stick the credit card in and it's complete because it's just waiting to get the final total and I've already done everything I'm going to do. So you're talking about the future of groceries. I wonder if y'all have an opinion. And your generation is probably going to determine it, what the future of groceries is. Is it no cashiers at all? Is it home delivery? Is it curbside? What do you think? Do you think it's gonna be radically different in 5 years? Or are we just gonna be a slow shift?
I see myself more and more times just gravitating towards self-checkout. No matter how much things I have in my basket, I think it's just a lot faster than having to wait for someone to scan it. I can just scan it and go. So I think also Amazon's new stores of where you can just walk in, grab everything you need, tap on your phone, and then pay and leave, and it scans everything to your Amazon account. The popularity of that also points into the direction it's going as well too. As far as delivery goes, I just find out last week that HEB has delivery. I didn't even know they did HEB delivery.
I've seen the cars out there.
Yeah, they have the little Chrysler Pacificas that drive around with the groceries in them. Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering, because I've not done home delivery. So, the issue with home delivery is people are real picky on produce. I don't care on, a box of cereal, but produce. So I'm wondering if there's a hesitancy to use home delivery.
I was hesitant because so I tested out the app. It costs about $6.95 for a delivery fee for your groceries. And each time you enter an item, you can check to say if you accept an alternative if they don't have it in stock. So that's why I was hesitant to use it, because I like a certain brand, or if I like to pick the produce. So that's the reason I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah, I wish HEB would, they know every single thing I bought the last 10 years. I wish an app where they would take all that transactions and they would put it into, they would send me a file of, here's the stuff you normally buy. Which of these do you want delivered to your house? I wish they would do that. That would be really convenient for me because they know what I buy as well as I do.
Well, I think if I remember correctly, I've done curbside a few times, and I mean that's the same process as for the delivery. You just click delivery instead of curbside. But I do know you can go back to your past orders and tap order again, and it'll like fill out your cart with everything you bought last time or whichever. You can go back through any past order and select one of those and it'll refill your cart with those items. And then I guess you can just go through and filter out anything that you don't really want, add in more stuff.
Yeah, I just
So-
wish they would try it where people who haven't done that before, but they have all those credit card transactions, because I tried HEB online and I had the same problem with the manual, that it's like, okay, we don't have this. And then I got to look through a million things to find an alternative. Whereas if they took everything I purchased, matched up everything they had, and just sent me what was missing. But yeah, I can see once I start curbside, they're going to have that history and then I can edit. So I'm just wondering, it'd be, grocery shopping it's time consuming, it's bulky. I hate carrying bags into the house. So I'm wondering, this sounds like something you just got to do just to run business, right? Even though the benefit, the net present values are massive, even if it was close, you probably just do it just because you got to keep your customers happy. So sometimes, if the net present value is even close to being positive, I remember at USA when they're doing the cost benefit for the internet, which you can imagine some years ago, there wasn't much people saying, is the net present value positive or not? There was just like, we have no choice, you got to do it. And I'm wondering if this isn't something for HEB. They just, what everybody's providing to their customers, they just got to do it because they're competing against everybody else.
I found out that Kroger's I think it's in Chicago and DC, they just started implementing tap to pay last year in a couple of their stores. So they haven't implemented in Texas or many states yet. So it's just beginning to roll out. So competitors are trying to roll out as well too. So I think to beat Kroger's and Walmart in Texas, they would definitely have to do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so the question is, are you first, or you wait and see what the competitors do? And HEB's pretty good at staying ahead of the others. I thought it was interesting you used the WAC for Kroger's. I like that you're pulling another project. Just remember what we talked about in class. Kroger's WAC works really, really well because they're publicly traded. So they're part of a diversified portfolio. Remember, HEB is not publicly traded. So it'd be an interesting, I don't know if any of y'all work for HEB or trying to get an intern there, but it would be interesting to see what their cost of capital is, because they're not publicly traded because they can't officially use the capital asset pricing model. But I wonder if they do. You would think a grocery store would have a low WAC, just like y'all used, but at the same time, it's violating the theory. So it's interesting if any of y'all work for HEB, it'd be good if y'all can find that out and let me know. I'd be really interested. All right, one Excel problem I'm having, and you're going to have to answer for me. Go to your break even, because I'm not understanding why your break even doesn't have a 3-year payback period. So there's some issue with your there's some issues. So I think it's your cumulative net present value has an issue. There's something going wrong there. Oh, because you have it minus, change your minus to plus. That may be true with some of your others as well. So yeah, you need to fix that before you turn in your last Excel. Go to your base case, and let's make sure it's set up correctly there. Oh yeah, so you got a problem with your cumulative, so y'all got to fix that. Sorry, I didn't catch that when y'all showed it to me. You're subtracting the cost, but the problem is the cost is already a negative number. And then the next one, remember, you need to do a sum. So you got to set that up. So you go back. Someone needs to go back to your application 4. Remember, it's not just sum, it's the XMPV. So let's go back and practice. Let's go to I9. You didn't have to do this on the exam because I'll let you just type it. So on I9, let's just remember, do equal XMPV. Open parentheses. Go get your rate off the assumptions page. You can get rid of all that and lock that in. And go back to your base case and in comma. and do your H8 and 8.9, H8 and 8.9, H9, comma, and then A8 and A9. Is this coming back to you? Column A, 8 and 9.
Okay.
And then you want to lock in the 8s on the H and the A. All right, hit enter. And copy that down. Now see how your last line matches your net present value, so you know it's correct. So 0.46, so it's a little bit different, right? So you might be able to copy that over to the base worse, but you'll know you have it right if the break even comes out at 3 years, because you know it has to be 3 years because your net present value is 0. So all right, so just fix that. You can fix things before you turn in your last Excel, so make sure you fix that before you turn in your last Excel. And Brandon, I forgot to tell your team, make sure you submit your Excel. All right, so that's the only thing I noticed. So all right. Any other questions from Mackenzie or Brandon?
I think I do have one. So HEB already has a huge amount of a market share here in San Antonio and across Texas where they're located. Can you talk a little bit more about your percent converted and how you got to that number? Because I'm curious if those numbers really line up with what might be converted, or if this project really just needs to be implemented but wouldn't see a huge increase in customers.
You cut on the first part of your question. I only heard the last part, which is
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just curious about how you got your percent converted, because while I think the project is needed, I'm curious if that many people would convert just for the tap to pay feature.
Yeah, so we used our survey data in here. So we sent out 3 surveys. The first one we sent out got about 88 responses. It was from students, and then random people. I was going around the gym literally with my phone and the QR code, having random people scan it as well too, that I can get a wide range. And we got, of course, an overwhelming people who said they shop at HEB, but the amount who shop at other stores who stated that they would go ahead and start shopping at HEB because the current stores they have don't have tap to pay. That's where we got the 2% from. And you're right. It's to assume that a whole 2% is generous. So we decided to make that 2% our best case scenario. That way, if the project does fail, we have at least a lot of leeway. So the 2% is the top that we got, and that's just based off of the survey.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, and Brandon, we talked about that. It's kind of my issue as well, is I don't use tap to pay, but I wonder if the people who do get irritated when they can't. And that's the reason, I agree. I was kind of, I remember we talked, I was somewhat with Brandon, is just really enough to get someone to switch. But people get into habits, how they do things, and it's just irritating. And yeah, it might be enough to get a few people. All right, interesting project. You're probably doing it similar to the way HEB would look at it. They might try some testing at a store to see if it does impact the queuing. I imagine line queues. I don't know if any of you are management majors, but line queuing is probably a huge issue for HEB. They probably spend a lot of time on that. So anytime they change the register procedure, I'm sure they're very concerned. They're not about to set up some major disaster. So they might test this at a store for a few months and just make sure they're not doing something unexpected, right? That would be a disaster. All right, that's good. I don't have any other questions.